Carbs receive an undeservedly bad reputation. Carbs are not bad. They are just very misunderstood. There are several different categories under the umbrella of carbohydrates, and that's what I want to talk to you about next. So let's head on over into my kitchen and we'll go check out those carbohydrates. All right, I'm here in my kitchen. We're going to talk about the different categories of all the different carbohydrates that there are. We're going to start out with the one called starch. They're also known as complex carbohydrates, and there's a lot of different products in this category. You might be familiar with a number of the different types of starches or starchy carbs. And what those types of carbohydrates are, they're just long chains of sugar molecules, because carbohydrates are sugar. Carbohydrates are glucose. They're made up of glucose molecules. So your complex carbohydrates are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different glucose molecules strung together. Okay? So, of course, you probably know that bread is a complex carbohydrate. Of course, our better for you carbohydrates are going to be the ones made with whole grains. And we'll talk about refined grains, but also white flour, pizza crust, buns. Most sandwich breads that you might get at a sandwich shop are going to be refined white flour. So breads. And then we have pasta. Of course, we have pasta. So, and it can be like egg noodles or just enriched white flour noodles, and as well as whole grain. So I prefer whole grain pasta, and it's just going to be made from the whole grain of the wheat. So that also is a complex carbohydrate. And then we have the gluten-free options now. This is chickpea rotini, which actually is much higher in protein than these other ones. So it's a good choice for those that need to be gluten-free. Moving on to some other whole grains, such as we mentioned the whole wheat. So we have quinoa. Quinoa is it's in the whole grain category, where technically it is actually a seed, but we consider it a whole grain, as well as brown rice. But all of the grains are going to be sources of carbohydrates, specifically complex carbohydrates. Corn tortillas. So corn tortillas or flour tortillas also are a source of carbohydrates. And the corn is also a whole grain. It's we consider it kind of like a starchy veggie, but technically it is actually a whole grain. We call it kind of like a starchy veggie. Another starchy veggie is a potato. I prefer sweet potatoes. I just love sweet potatoes. But sweet potatoes, white potatoes, all of those are complex carbohydrates, as well as this other starchy vegetable, acorn squash, as well as peas are another source of a complex carbohydrate or starch. Then we have beans or legumes. I always buy them canned just because of the convenience of them, but black beans, red beans, pinto beans, chickpeas, all sorts of beans, of course, getting them dried, or you can get them in cans, but these are also carbohydrates. They're also a great source of fiber and protein, so they're kind of dual action there. Cereals. Another whole grain is our oats, so 100% rolled oats. These are a complex carbohydrate, as well as other types of cereals, and the hot cereal like oatmeal, but also things like grits also would be a carbohydrate. All sorts of cereals are going to be sources of carbohydrates because most of them are made with some sort of grain. Of course, I prefer the whole grain type cereals. And other things like crackers, I also prefer whole grain crackers. So crackers are going to be a carbohydrate. Now, they do have some lower carb options now on the market, but when we're talking about just traditional type foods, popcorn, snack food also is technically also it is also a whole grain, just like because it is corn. So popcorn is a whole grain, but also a starchy carb. And then we have things like granola bars and so all sorts of different things in the granola bar category. So those are also made from carbohydrates. And then other types of snack foods like this Chex Mix. Nothing wrong with eating the snack foods. It's just the portion of the quantity. If you're watching your carbohydrate intake, you'll just need to read the label, read the package for the carbohydrate content. And then also other snack foods like pretzels and potato chips and tortilla chips. I already ate the bag of these chips, and but yeah, that also is a carbohydrate. And, you know, I just want to point out too, I know potato chips kind of get a bad name, but they only have three ingredients: potatoes, salt, and oil. So, but just the combination of those three that make it very irresistible and hard to stop. So that again covers the category of the complex carbohydrates. We have breads and cereals and pasta and rice and legumes and starchy veggies and snack type foods. So lots of things in this category. All right, we'll move on to the next category of carbohydrates, which is going to be what? We'll find out. All right, this next category, fruits. Fruits, all fruits are carbohydrates, no matter how they're packaged, whether they're fresh, whether they're drinkable, whether they're frozen, whether they're in a can, whether they're dried. They're all sources of carbohydrates. And there are such great sources of carbohydrates, especially the ones that come in their own little package, the fresh sources. So I've got apple and oranges and some grapes here. Dried grapes or raisins also are a source of a carbohydrate. Because they have the water pulled out of them, though, the portion is going to be smaller as far as how many carbohydrates you get for a portion. And then any kind of juice. Juice also is a source of a carbohydrate. Any type of juice. If you're going to buy juice, I prefer that you buy 100% juice. And personally, this isn't me, I prefer eating my fruit versus drinking my fruit. So just because I get more nutrition, get more satisfaction from eating food, as well as you get the fiber, and plus you get the phytonutrients, which are plant-based compounds that have a preventive measure to them. So all fruits, carbohydrates. What's next? Next up in our carbohydrates, we have the non-starchy vegetables. We've got the starches, or the complex carbohydrates. We have fruits and vegetables. Now, pretty much every vegetable that you can imagine, and I have a whole list of them, is going to be a non-starchy vegetable, with the exception of corn, peas, winter squash, like the acorn squash I showed you, potato, parsnips. But pretty much everything else is going to be a non-starchy vegetable, meaning that they're still made from glucose molecules, but they're not as tightly packed. There's a lot more water in these foods, and so the amount of carbohydrates is not as high as might be in some of our complex carbohydrates. So in this category, and this can be frozen, canned, or fresh, of course, but here I have carrots and celery and a cucumber and tomatoes and a zucchini or other type of summer squash, lettuce, onions, etc., etc. I have in frozen veggies are great to have on hand, and as well as canned vegetables also. I always have canned tomatoes on hand because it's great to, throw into a crock pot or make a chili or something like that. But all of these are sources of carbohydrates. Very low in carbohydrates though. Also, as I mentioned, all carbohydrates come from the earth. So if it came from the ground, it is going to be a source of a carbohydrate. Now, some sorts of things that come from the ground are carbohydrates, have some carbohydrates, but not as many as some of these other ones. So for example, like an avocado is a plant-based food, but it's also more of a source of fat. It's a wonderful fat. It has some carbohydrates, as well as things like nuts and seeds also have some carbohydrates, but they're more larger sources of fats and protein. So I just wanted to point that out as well. But again, all sorts of veggies, non-starchy veggies, load up on these. We can't get enough of them. And look for a rainbow of color too when you're looking at filling up your plate. Half of your plate should come from non-starchy veggies. Okay, what's next? Next up is our animal source of carbohydrate. Animal source being lactose or milk sugar from dairy. And so milk, of course, milk would be a source of carbohydrates, and yogurt, and because it's made from milk. There are some other dairy products like cheese, but it's very, very low in carbohydrates. Just a couple of grams in an ounce of cheese. Cottage cheese has a little bit more, some sour cream, but mostly we're talking about yogurt and milk when we're referring to the amount of carbohydrates. Personally, I prefer Greek yogurt that's plain, and I like to add my own fruit to it because it has like one ingredient. It's got the milk in there and maybe some added vitamin A and D. But the flavored yogurts also are going to be a source of carbohydrate, but they're going to have not only the lactose, but they might have some added sugar. So those need to be taken into consideration. But anyway, so that is another source of carbohydrate. We've got one more source for you. Ready? Okay. All right, we're down to our last category of carbohydrates. This is probably the most significant one. And when people are talking about don't eat carbs, I don't say that, but when you hear that, this might be what people are referring to. It's all of these added sugars in the diet. Now, we've talked about complex carbohydrates and fruits and non-starchy vegetables and our dairy, specifically milk and yogurt, all nutritious forms of carbohydrates. And then we have all the added sugars. Now, sugars can come in many different ways, and there are over 50 different names of types of sugars, and I have a couple of them here just as an example. But anything that has sugar in it, so your pies, your candy, your cakes, your cookies, your ice cream, sugar-sweetened beverages like your Coca-Cola and other beverages that are made from sugar primarily. Then we also have things like honey and maple syrup and corn syrup and molasses and cane sugar, of course, granulated sugar, brown sugar, lots of different names under the category of sugars. So, and that's where we have a tendency to overconsume a bit, okay? And I just want to illustrate something though. I'm going to show you like a tablespoon of sugar, granulated sugar. This is about 15 grams of carbohydrate, okay? Same with brown sugar and these. Also a tablespoon, about 15 grams of carbohydrate. Now, so the portion is pretty darn small compared to something like our non-starchy vegetables. And okay, this whole thing is not 15 grams. It's more than 15 grams, but to illustrate, you could eat a lot of these non-starchy vegetables to get 15 grams of carbohydrate. In other words, the portions are much larger than what you can get in these other added sugars. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out to you, okay? So that covers our review of the carbohydrates. Let me know if you have any questions. I will be more than happy to answer them, and we'll move on from here, okay? All righty. I hope that overview helped you understand all the different categories of carbohydrates. And again, there are starches or complex carbohydrates or starchy carbs, fruits, non-starchy veggies, dairy, including milk and yogurt, and then of course all of the various different types of sugar. And I did I'll link here to a video that I did. It was a cereal, a healthy cereal that had 9 different sources of sugar in it. But that's the kind of thing that, it's added sugar in our diet that's just a little bit more than it should be, most definitely. Now, the natural sugar in fruit and milk is not a problem. It is just the added sugar that we need to be mindful of. If you enjoyed this video, you might like my free 19-page guide on carbohydrates, which goes into great detail of all this information. Link is in the description. And also, I'd love it if you clicked the red subscribe button and the bell icon if you're watching on YouTube, so you can get notified of all the upcoming Neily on Nutrition videos. And don't forget to stick around and watch my bloopers, which I always have. Thanks for watching Neily on Nutrition, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. And our dairy, milk, and yogurt, oh shoot, I got an itch. All right, let's start this over. Some people might say don't ever eat them. I don't ever say that. I don't know if you heard that, but that was George, who was down here, for the most part, kind of being quiet. Go lay down, George. Go lay down. Go lay down. Go lay down. Go lay down. Good boy.